Hey, welcome back to another whiteboard chat. I have my work pants on today, so time for a video. But all right, no more bad jokes. So all right, let's talk about cardio. So this was in my Facebook and Instagram story, another poll, I guess you'd call it, I did on suggestions, and I thought this would be a good one to cover. It's a little less sciencey. I mean, there's still some science here, a little more practical. Everyone likes practical. They want to know, what is it? What can I do with it? And they want it to know it now. So hopefully there's some good takeaways in here that you guys can apply. Obviously everything's kind of situational, but that's what I want to talk about. So first off, what do I want to accomplish here? Talk about different types of cardio, timing, before anyone gets upset with me about timing, just wait. And overall energy expenditure, creating deficits, creating surpluses, tracking cardio, different types, adaptation to cardio, so on and so forth. So first off, types of cardio, yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot. List, hit, miss, hiss, other. And I mean, there's multiple subgroups within those ways that you would do lists. I mean, lists could be walking on a treadmill, you know, the traditional types, walking on a treadmill, maybe using a stationary bike, using a Stairmaster. I mean, any of those things, and those are all perfectly fine. Cardio, at the end of the day, type and timing are largely unimportant. There are reasons that they can be important, but for the most part, what we're looking for is energy expenditure, right? That's the whole point. If we're talking about fat loss, I'm going to push any cardiovascular benefit aside. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about fat loss, or not just fat loss, but calorie balance control. So that could be fat loss or controlling your surplus, right? Mainly, right? There are other benefits potentially like insulin sensitivity and cardiovascular benefits and being more cardiovascularly fit if that is something you need, right? But energy balance. All right, so we have all these types. So where do they really fall in? What are the timing? Well, I'm going to skip around a little bit, so stick with me here. I don't necessarily plan this out the best and have everything in the perfect order, but all right. First off, why might we choose one type over another? Well, I put it down here to enjoyability. Is that a thing? Well, yes, there are some people that do enjoy it. Not me. I've done too much of it and I do not really enjoy it. I think it's boring and a waste of time, but I do it for its benefits and when it's needed. So yes, enjoyability. If you have a preference on type, well, that could definitely be a consideration. So why else might we choose different types? Well, there's a couple different reasons. So one, time. HIIT or interval type training can be quicker, right? It provides different metabolic benefit potential, like for some EPOC effect, perhaps. Whereas the more aerobic, longer, steady state type cardio is more time consuming. Also, different types. I put over here stress, cortisol, and downstream impact. That might be a reason that we choose different types. So for example, I have someone that is undergoing some recovery from downregulated hormones or things that are mostly stress driven. Do I want to be hammering them with a bunch of HIIT cardio? No. Even if we created the same energy expenditure from HIIT versus steady state, we're going to get a different hormonal outcome because the HIIT cardio is going to be much more intensive. It's going to just probably beat them into the ground. Now, can you overdo list cardio or steady state cardio? Absolutely yes. You can do too much and it can cause some negative downstream effect hormonally and with cortisol, but you're probably going to get a more abrupt acute effect from the HIIT cardio. Again, total amount's always going to determine the outcome though, right? So, a lot of things to consider there. I'll even do things like metabolic circuits with people sometimes. If I want to do HIIT cardio, add like body weight or lightweight exercise metabolic type circuits to the end of a training session. That can be a way to do HIIT cardio and basically get the same effect. Lots of ways to do HIIT. I mean, especially when we're talking, people that are doing cardio in a prep and their legs are really tired, I might use battle ropes, rope swings or rowing. And if they're already doing steady state cardio and they're already beating their legs up and then training and all that, you can do some upper body type of interval cardio to supplement, right? So, I mean, there's a lot of different things that you could potentially do there for cardio types and reasons that you might do it. All right. Timing. Steady state, this was a whole big thing back in the day. I think most people agree now that low intensity cardio especially doesn't really matter if you're in a fasted or fed state in terms of efficiency. However, a lot of people do prefer it in one state or the other. That's fine. There are supplementation considerations. If you're using anything that mobilizes fatty acids and requires you to be in a baseline insulin state or a fasted state, then you're going to want to do it fasted, right? Common ones being like yohimbine, right? Or growth hormone, if people use that. Requires fasted state for free fatty acid mobilization, and that would fall under timing. Now, you might other like common sense type of considerations. You maybe don't want to do a bunch of cardio right before your weight training session, perhaps. All right, that seems to make enough sense, right? So, stuff to consider. But timing, largely unimportant. It's more from a practical sense, and then also supplementation side. So, I mean, supplementation and practicality are the two main things going to look at there in terms of timing. Yeah, I mean, if someone is doing steady state cardio and they already wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work and everything, and they're already having a hard time with their sleep schedule, am I going to tell them to get up at 3 just to get their steady state cardio in because I want to have them utilize a supplement for a little more free fatty acid mobilization? No, I'm going to tell them to sleep an extra hour and do it later in the day and get the same caloric expenditure. So just, use some common sense on that. Weigh the pros and cons. What's going to be the benefit? Timing versus supplementation versus schedule versus stress, and so on and so forth. So, all right. Also types. I wanted to put this again, like I said, I'm skipping around a little bit, but what about steps? So steps, yeah, steps, and this steps would kind of go into this NEAT and total energy expenditure, though I literally saw someone arguing on Facebook the other day that utilizing steps was a form of NEAT. Well, another person said if they're intentionally programming steps as a form of cardio, then it's not NEAT. Well, none of that really matters. The fact of the matter is you're burning calories, and that's the whole point. So can you use steps? Yes, you can use steps. You can use steps very effectively. I have had people prep for, do entire contest preps with only steps, using only step counts, or steps plus adding, supplementing with HIIT cardio. No formal steady state, as in like walk 30 minutes on the treadmill. None of that. That's fine. I use that stuff too, but steps are something you can use, and there are benefits to that. One of the benefits being tracking. Tracking meaning more accuracy. So there's some flaws here when we're talking about NEAT levels. So these things are kind of all interconnected, but obviously if you have someone doing 30 minutes of steady state cardio on the treadmill every day, and their NEAT levels start dropping later on in the deficit phase, because why? Because, well, maybe they're a little more tired and their body's compensating, or they're trying to do less. What becomes the issue there? Well, they're burning less calories, so that cardio is not doing as much. Whereas if we have steps, we can still make sure that we're hitting a total number of steps regardless, right? Could you walk on the treadmill to get those steps? Yep, you could. You could go outside and walk. You could do whatever. Now, step counters aren't going to be 110% accurate, but it does give us a way to account for that changes in outside energy expenditure outside of our normal cardio. Now, if you're very, very routine and you're making sure that you're doing the same stuff every day and your NEAT levels aren't dropping too much, probably not going to matter that much. And I mean, let's be honest, people have prepped for bodybuilding shows without using steps for freaking bajillion years. So I mean, it's not necessary, but it can be a way to track total movement a little bit more effectively. All right, so that's something to consider. It's just going to help us account for a NEAT, but also total energy expenditure, and you know, there's less of that, less slacking off in there, I guess, or less room to, because you know you need to hit your steps. And then, like I said, you might supplement that with some type of interval cardio, right? All right, there might be some nuances in there, but I think you guys probably get the idea. Now, with that, I talked about potentially moving less. So yes, the body is very, very smart. It's going to get you to move less. So like right here, where I'm kind of moving back and forth like this, well, I'm also eating lots of food. So if I wasn't, my body might tell me to move less, and I might just move, you know, just sit here. That's why I like to use steps and movement and things to make sure that I'm not doing that. Make sure that I'm, you know, my expenditure stays where I want it to be, right? Cardio adaptation, well, that's also part of it. Cardio adaptation meaning literally burning less doing the same thing. And there's reasons for that. I mean, one of the main reasons is body weight, right? You're gonna burn less if you walk for 30 minutes on the treadmill at a speed of 3, an incline of 3, and you weigh 250, and then you lose 50 pounds and you're 200. Well, yeah, you're gonna burn less at 200 pounds than you are 250 pounds because you're carrying a lot less body weight, right? So that's one of the, you know, one of the reasons that people don't consider that in contest prep. That's one of the reasons that you're more cardio adapted, is because, well, or that your cardio is less effective, I guess I should say, because you just weigh less. It's not necessarily the fat tissue thing, because you don't really feed fat tissue in that way, but it is because you're carrying less. That's why people can use things like, you could do like a weighted vest to compensate. Lose 10 pounds, put 10 pounds on your vest. Lose 20 pounds, put 20 pounds on your vest. Can you do that? Yep, you could. I've done it with people. It works. Do you have to do it? No, you don't. You could just increase steps or other expenditure over time. It's going to do the same exact thing, because it always comes down to energy expenditure. Energy expenditure. It's just, you're just eliminating that guessing point of weight loss by adding the weight to the vest, right? Okay, so cardio adaptation also is just being more efficient at cardio, less rise in heart rate. You know, I have people that are have done cardio for too long and never really had breaks or lower periods, and they probably don't burn as much as the person that hasn't been doing much cardio, because, well, they don't get as much much raise in heart rate. And you could take their resting heart rate, for example. Those two people, easy one, we'll do a runner, right? We'll do someone that distance runs. They're very cardio adapted. Why? Well, that's the whole point, because they don't want to burn a ton of calories. They want to be very efficient at their exercise, right? So their resting heart rate might be 50, pretty low. I've even seen lower than that. But you take someone that doesn't do any cardio, and they are starting a cardio regimen for their fat loss diet, and their resting heart rate is 80. Well, who's going to burn more calories doing the same distance, I guess, or same thing? The person with the higher heart rate. Okay, so usually, most of the time. So yeah, cardio adaptation, and that's just energy efficiencies, also is the part of moving less, unintentionally moving less, right? So you have those two things, and they all play in together, and that's why steps can be handy in terms of tracking. Okay, and I already mentioned enjoyability, creating deficits, and then post-show reduction. Yeah, I mentioned creating deficits because I had someone ask the other day on my Q&A, well, what if I am going into a fat loss phase and I leave food high, but then I increase cardio high? Will that still work? Well, yeah, of course. Of course it'll work. It's expenditure, right? You're still creating a deficit. Now, I will say that over the years, I've definitely seen that some people respond better to creating a deficit more through food or more through cardio or more through a combination of the two. So you say, well, how does that happen? Well, that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you said you did 500 calories of expenditure and then 500 calories of food, reduction in food. It should do the same thing, right? Well, no, not necessarily. On paper, yes, but the problem is the adaptation portion. So the way that you adapt through different metabolic pathways and different energy conservation pathways and different downregulation of metabolism pathways through food reductions. I mean, there's a lot of little things to consider there. So would it yield exactly the same result? Maybe not. Is it something to really worry about? Yes and no. On a real basic level, no. In a more advanced person trying to get very lean, yes. Or get off stubborn body fat, probably yes. Especially if I know that the person reacts to certain things. Like I have clients that genuinely, I know once I start adding cardio, they'll start dropping because they seem to adapt to that less than me dropping their food, which they just seem to adapt to, right? Or vice versa. But then I'm also going to consider, well, what is that cardio addition going to do to stress? Maybe it's very stressful in their body because they're already very active and they already have stress in their life. So I don't want to increase their activity level. I want to rather just take food rather than increase activity. So I mean, there's so many little things I'm going to consider from a practicality standpoint, from a hormonal and metabolic standpoint, when it comes to how I want to create that deficit, at least initially, and then later on, and as their body gets more taxed and as I learn more about them. So I mean, I'm going to consider all that stuff. Now, I put post-show reduction on here just because kind of goes into the whole deficit and energy balance thing. Just always keep in mind, you know, when you are doing cardio and prep and then you come out of it and you're reverse dieting. Sorry, I have a serious itch right here. Yeah, I mean, the reduction of cardio post-show makes a huge difference. You know, if you want to create this surplus after the show and you want to make a 500 calorie a day surplus, for example, maybe, but you do that through food and then all of a sudden you drop, but you also drop all your cardio. Well, it's going to be way more than 500 calories, depending on how much cardio you were doing, of course, but you can't just drop all that expenditure out. So keep that in mind post-show. There has to be, or there should be some strategy there too. But again, also depends on adaptation, also depends on stress. If someone's very stressed out, that's more a reverse dieting topic. I'm not going to go into that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that covers it pretty well in terms of different types of cardio, different reasons you might do different timing, different reasons you might do different types of cardio, tracking versus, you know, with traditional types, which are fine, versus steps, which are also fine, advantages to both, scheduling advantages, potential downstream effects in terms of stress and what that might do to your fat loss, preferences, cardio adaptation, energy efficiency, all these things, deficits. All right, so that is a nice little overview on cardio, how you might implement it, and all the considerations that you may potentially make. So I hope that's helpful.